welcome everyone to this week's edition of the Bombercast for 2023, the post-Richmond win edition, first time in 12 games, and we can officially say that on this podcast. I'm your regular co-host, The Grizz, and with me is guest host this week, Dero. Dero, thank you for joining. What a win. How about that for the first time in 13 tries, we managed to get over the top of those bloody Tigers.
It's a beautiful thing. It was a fantastic win. I'm still buzzing, to be honest.
Were you watching it on TV or were you at the game?
I was at the game. Yeah, I was at the game. So got to experience everything, the highs, the lows, and the last 7 seconds, which were fantastic.
We'll get to the last sort of second in a second. It was a great game, very absorbing game to watch. I thought that the skills were sort of lacking at different points, but it was an absorbing contest. It never sort of got away from either team at any point. Richmond got out to about 3 goals up with about 5 to 6 minutes left, but we rallied back, which was good. But we haven't had much luck against these Tigers. We've sort of been their bunnies over the period of dominance that they've had from about 2017 through to now. I think the last time we beat them was literally 10 years ago. It was a game of contrasting styles. We played with a lot of uncontested marks. They were trying to get their running game going, and both teams had periods of the game where their style was on top. But I think our ability to control the footy, and Damien Hardwick sort of mentioned it in his press conference, really was able to keep us in the game, I think, because Richmond's running power was pretty clear to see.
Yeah, absolutely. Clearly a tactical effort to I guess chip the ball around and slow it down a bit at times, maintain possession. But then I think when we got up and running and we started to move a little bit more directly and with a bit of speed, we started to look really dangerous. So there was definitely ups and downs, shifts in momentum, and yeah, it was good to see us come away with a win at the end of the day. What was it? What did you say? 10 years since we've beaten them. That's amazing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think it was 2013 we last beat them. This was the 13th time we've played since then. First time we got a win, which is a bit bizarre, isn't it? Like, I remember Melbourne and St Kilda, there was that stretch where St Kilda beat Melbourne like 10 times in a row or whatever it was, and that seemed unsurmountable. But somehow, classic Essington was able to beat that streak. It was a bizarre game. It was a great finish, obviously, for us. You were there at the game. What was the atmosphere like? What was it with 7 seconds, not even 7, at 40 seconds ago when Sammy Durham took that mark in the goal square? What was going through your mind as he was lining up to kick it?
I thought he'd miss it, actually. I could only watch. And it was fantastic when it went through. That is one of the greatest wins I've seen for a while.
Yeah, and I think Sammy Durham said in the media on a couple of occasions, said it on the broadcast and the next day on Sunday Footy Show, that he was basically packing himself because he missed something similar to that on his debut, and I'd completely forgotten about it. But I looked back and it was he missed one from point blank range. That would have been quite the anticlimax. If he hadn't missed that kick. Oh gosh, could you imagine being a mod on the Essendon board? Yeah. Suck that night.
Oh look, I've told this gag before, but I kept watching the replays of it, thinking he was going to miss. That's it was just one of those things. Yeah, we've been on the receiving end of some losses. The one last year where Jamie Elliott kicked that goal from the pocket.
Yeah,
It's good to have one go our way for a change.
The game that went through my head was Gary Rowan on the line against Sydney. Remember up at the SCG?
Yeah, where he threw Gleeson out of the way and marked it. I remember that. Yeah, I remember that one
with
too.
About 15 seconds left, and he took his 30 seconds or so. So you just knew, we're going to this protracted death. But we won't go back there because that's a haunting game. I still have nightmares. I still have nightmares about that one. Let's move on. We won one of those. But it was an interesting culmination because I thought, we don't historically play end of games well. We tend to get beat. You mentioned the Collingwood game last year. There are multiple, the whole last quarter against Collingwood this year, for example. the last sort of minute against Port Adelaide. We don't tend to play these situations well, whereas I think we actually tactically we got it right. So, you know, Mason Redmond was saying on, I think, Triple M after the game that it's called chips in, where with about 3 minutes to go, you know, the chips in sign went up and it just meant take the game on at all times. And in that last, you know, sort of style of play, I think a lot of things went right. Mason Redmond and Nick Hind were able to get fat side space. Dyson Heppel, who couldn't catch a cold for the best part of the game, took a really important intercept mark with about 50 seconds left. And one thing, you know, even leading up to the Durham goal, you'll see there that, like, Redmond kicks it inside 50 to about 4 Richmond players. I'm like, oh, no, we're going to get picked off here. Sammy Draper comes flying in from the bottom of the screen and forces a contest. It was quite a good effort by Sammy. I think something that's relatively underrated. You just see him fly against 4 Richmond defenders, brings the ball to ground. Jake Stringer does the team thing for probably the first time in his entire career. And Sammy, it just for the first time ever, Durham, I feel like, you know, we got all the last end of moment things right.
Yeah. Well, even the ball bounced the right way at one point there. You know, it just went our way. It fell our way on the day, which was really good. Maybe our luck's turning. I don't know. You know, there's definitely some good vibes happening at the moment, I think.
Yeah, and you're getting the players, I think, to the media. One guy I did want to touch on, we're going to talk about individuals now, is Zach Merritt. I thought that was probably the most complete game he's ever played. Like, he's had games where he's won more disposals, he's, you know, kicked more goals, whatever. But I just thought his tackling and his defensive pressure, with so many experienced guys out of the midfield, it was him and the kids, and he was one out for a lot of the time. Stringer went in there at times for centre bounces, but I just thought that was one of the best all-round, if probably the best all-round game I've ever seen him play.
Yeah, have to agree there. And he definitely led from the front, or led by example. Yeah, great captain's game. He was brilliant. And as you say, it was a complete game. His kicking was precise. You know, his defensive game was on point. He was fantastic. And probably the difference between the two sides in the end, I think.
Yeah, and that chase down tackle on Dustin Martin to turn it over, really. Right, yeah. Jack Revolt having the biggest brain explosions I've ever seen, just soccering it straight to Jordan Ridley. I don't quite understand what he was doing. But I thought the midfield had a good game overall. I think Jai Caldwell had some shocking moments in terms of, I think, that dump kick in the defensive goal square straight to Jack Graham and a couple of missed kicks. But all in all, dirty touches, just about drilled a pass through Sam Wiedemann's chest in the fourth quarter, with one of the best kicks out of a clearance I've ever seen. It was really good to see guys like him and Ben Hobbs step up in the absence of Parrish and Shion Setterfield, who are all out missing. It was a great game. It was great to see sort of the younger guys step in and do a job.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I know we spoke about this before, but one other who I thought looked okay, his kicking could have been a bit better, was Wiedemann. He surprised me a little bit this year. I think he's done pretty well. I mean, he's kicked these 2 or 3 goals. He's taken some really strong grabs at times. It's probably only really his kicking that's let him down a little bit. He cleans that up a little bit. I mean, he's having a good year, I think.
Yeah, no, I think he's on track for about 40 goals this year. I think that's if you were to pro rata, you know, to use a technical term, his goals to games. He's played 8, kicked 13. So you're basically going at, what's that? 1.6 goals a game. You're looking at roughly 40 goals, which we found, you know, a couple of guys. Peter Wright we got for a half-eaten bag of twisties, and he kicked 50-odd goals for us last year. If Sam Wiedemann can kick 40-odd goals as the second guy, I think part of it is just continuity. He's played 8 games, basically picked when fit. It just, you know, these young, talented guys just need opportunity. It seems like they need it. And yeah, he had a couple of horrific misses on the weekend, but if he'd kicked 4 or 5, I think we would be raving about him, which is great to see. But I think the greatest thing I think about this year so far is we're seeing guys step up, whereas I think last year it was left to too many guys. And the older guys just weren't sort of stepping up, and it became this sort of cycle of no one was doing the team thing because no one else was doing the team thing. But it just seems like everyone's working hard, and we're missing guys, but the effort's there. And Dyson Heppel's had probably a good month. He had a couple of horrific kicks on the weekend and dropped a couple of marks. But I thought, like I said, that intercept with about 50 seconds left was crucial. If he had lost that, it was basically Richmond 3-on-1 at the wing. So he had to take that mark, and he did, which is great. Sammy Durham had a great game, aside from the winning goal. Kane Baldwin was one. What do you think of Kane Baldwin's game? I thought it was pretty solid.
He's surprised me down back. He's been much better than I expected him to be. I think he stays in. I don't think he's done much wrong since he's come in, which is great, given he's probably the fourth or fifth choice for that position in the seniors. I guess this is something that you look for that's encouraging, is you bring a few young players in and they start to show a few signs, and he's another one, I think, who's definitely shown that he can play a little bit. So it'll be interesting to see how he goes over the next few weeks if he manages to hold his spot.
Yeah, and I think we'll get to changes later in the pod possibly, but I think Jordan Ridley coming back just settles everyone down. I think, like, just structurally it slots everyone into better holes. Baldwin and Zerk Thatcher both looked far more accomplished with Ridley there as the guy flying into a system when needed, and you just see the confidence of the side build up.
He's such a good player, Ridley.
Oh, he's
probably a bit underrated, I think.
He's probably underrated outside of Essendon, but I don't think anyone within the club or within the supporter base is underrated.
Yeah, he's such a good player. He just seems to know. He just seems to read the ball so well. He knows where to go, as you said. Knows when to come across and help out a teammate. Knows which gaps to fill. His kicking is fantastic. I think there's one kick that he did in the game that stuck with me. I think he was on the wing and it looked like he was kicking to an opposition player, but it just cleared his head and landed into the diving hands of Wiedemann, who was on a lead. I think it was Wiedemann on a lead. It was a brilliant kick. He's an amazing kick of the football as well. Just a really good player. And yet you're right, we definitely look a lot better with him back in the side.
It was great to see, I think, everyone come together, everything come together in this game in the sense of the effort sort of culminating in a win. Like, there's only so many sort of competitive efforts you can come up with against good teams before, the preaching of system and effort sort of starts ringing hollow. And so we got the win against Melbourne, which was great. To get this one against Richmond, so probably the two best teams of the last 5 to 6 years, was really good. And we probably got Richmond at a good time, I think, as well. They're not in great form, and their coach just stood aside, so everything probably wasn't going great to their joint to begin with. Yeah. But you can only play who's in front of you. And speaking of sort of playing what's in front of you, I suppose, I just want to talk about where we're at this point in the season. So we're 5-5, and Fox Sports put up our draw and had us. We've had the single, so number one toughest draw in the league over the first 10 games. We've got the second easiest over the next 14. We're 5-5 now. I came into this season and Bonter and I talked about expectations. We didn't think finals were realistic, but we just wanted to see improvement. We wanted to see young guys play. We're 5-5, which I thought were going to be 3-7, 2-8, with a really easy draw come up. Is finals too high of a bar? Is that the bar we need to be setting, or is it still no process, effort, and system and young guys is what we really need to be focusing on?
I think it all depends. If we have a good run with injuries and we continue to play the way we're playing, we get a few back, the kids stay reasonably consistent, well, then we probably should be aiming to win at least half those games. And especially, I think you said before, 2 games against North and 2 games against West Coast. There's 4 of the 14 and 10 left to go. And that'll take us to 9 wins. So what do we need? 3 out of 10, 4 out of 10 from there to make it. I think as long as we're seeing improvement and as we've seen, and I think, that's enough to be happy with. But geez, it'd be good to play finals, and even better if we can get in there and win one for a change, But I think we've exceeded. I think the main thing is we've already exceeded our expectations. You said 2 wins, 2-8, maybe 3-7. We're 5-5, so that's better than what you probably anticipated, what I anticipated. But hopefully we continue to see the signs we're seeing now, and hopefully some more good wins. And who knows, we might be lining up for finals tickets later on.
Yeah.
Let's see. Let's not get too far ahead of ourselves.
No. But I think, it's not unrealistic. And
No.
I tend to think, aim there. Just because you aim for something and don't reach it doesn't mean it's not a success. So if we say, right, we should be aiming to win 7 of the next 13 games, be 12 and 11 and have a shake at the finals. If we don't get there, okay, at least we tried. And we can point to, we didn't make the finals, but along the way, we discovered Sam Wiedemann's a key forward for the future. We saw Nick Cox and Elijah Sartis and Zach Reed, whenever he gets back, get 6, 8, 10 games into them to point us towards next year. We realised we can trade Darcy Parish.
Don't go there, seriously. That'll be the end of the podcast.
No, I'm being facetious, but
I know.
But I think we can discover all those things along the way. If we make finals, we make finals. But I'm optimistic that, like I said, West Coast, North Melbourne, 4 games against them. GWS still to come as well. We've got Adelaide, Port again, Port in Melbourne. We've got Carlton. That's going to be a massive game in 2 weeks. Like if we knock off West Coast, North Melbourne, and Carlton are still struggling, they're going to really be redlining that game. And there'd just be something great about really killing off any chances of finals they might have going forward. But that's 3 weeks from now. Anything else on the Richmond game you want to sort of touch on before we move on?
Not really. I think we've covered it.
No worries. Well, we'll move to just general AFL news, because unless you've been living under a rock, a couple of big news stories have sort of been affecting the AFL generally. We'll get to we'll start with the latest victim of the Essendon coach killing curse, which is teams that lose to Essendon sacking their coach the next day, it seems like.
Feels so good to be on the other side of it for a change.
Yeah, I suppose. We sacked our coach, what was it, 11 games ago, but we won't talk about that. So Damien Hardwick, 3-time premiership coach, arguably the greatest coach in Richmond history. Tom Heafy fans will have an argument about that, but he's obviously stepping aside. This has major ramifications, I think, for a number of coaching positions around the league, both for coaches out of contract and in contract. But I just think it's worth noting that he's an Essendon boy, Damien Hardwick, but he arrived there when Richmond were a basket case, and now him and Peggy O'Neill and Brendan Gale have turned that place into an absolute sort of powerhouse. And kudos to Dimmer for doing that.
Absolutely, I loved him as a rugged halfback flanker at Essendon. He was tough, and I guess you want him to be an Essendon person, but I guess he's a bit to Richmond now as Sheeds is to Essendon. Very similar in many ways, actually. But look, as you said, his record speaks for itself. He's had a fantastic career as a coach. 3 premierships puts him right up there with anyone who's ever coached. He's done it with a smile on his face. He seems to have done it the right way, and kudos to him. Well done. Hope to see him back. He's actually, I really like watching him talk about footy as well. I think, if he's not coaching, he might be really good in the media, but I guess we'll just have to wait and see on that one.
His demeanour in press conferences versus his demeanour on just general media is very different. Like when he's talking to the media, he's a real prick. When he's part of the media, he's really interesting to listen to. But I suppose a lot of coaches are like that. Mick Malthouse has always been like that. If you see him on TV, he's great. Great value as well. So it will be an interesting sort of domino effect, though, because there's already links between sort of Richmond and Ken Hinkley. The Port Adelaide go after Damien Hardwick. There's questions of, does Dimmer just do an Alistair Clarkson and wait 18 months and wait? I think there's 8 sort of coaching gigs out of contract next year. And then that's not including teams like Essendon and North Melbourne last year that see an opportunity for an experienced coach and move on their contracted coach. This could be, it's rare that you see 3-time plus premiership coaches available in the space of 18 months like we have with Clarkson and Hardwick. But this could be significant. Carlton fans are already calling for Voss's head to get Hardwick in there.
Yeah, well, something wrong at Carlton, I think. I mean, their list is as good as well, I reckon I've said, although they don't look like they're a great list this year. I know they've had a few out, but there's something not quite right at Carlton, whether that's the coach, whether it's other things. It's never a good look when you see the coach and the captain arguing or appearing to argue down on the ground, on the sideline. Anyway, getting back to Dimo, I mean, I don't know. I mean, it'll be really interesting to. I mean, I've heard a few conspiracy theories. There's a few theories floating around already about where he's going to end up, but I guess we'll just have to wait and see. I'd love to see him back at Essendon in some capacity, but I know we probably wouldn't be able to fit him in there. Yeah, I don't know. What do you think?
I think. Yeah, I don't know. I think there's very little chance he's going to come back to Essendon, considering how close he is with Truck. That might be a bit of a barrier.
That one.
Yeah, whoops. But I wonder if a gig like the Western Bulldogs, so if the Bulldogs flame out again this year, do the Dogs look at Luke Beveridge and go, we've got too talented of a list to keep having this happen? Can Hardwick be that guy to tie it all together? I think Carlton, if they move Voss on, which would be remarkable, would be a decent sort of fit as well. I think Carlton's probably just not fast enough to play the way Hardwick likes to play. I don't know. And it's one of those things where it will be completely unforeseen. Like some club will move on their coach and we'll be like, what the hell just happened? Yeah. I could see Adelaide. What if Adelaide flame out in the next 6 months? And we've seen how talented that list is. Could you imagine sort of Hardwick taking them over on the upswing, for example? I think whoever he coaches next, I don't think it's going to be an obvious candidate. But, this is the Essendon podcast, so we can probably move on from that point. We'll touch very briefly on another news item. We won't go too deep into it because of the complexities and the sensitivities involved, but it's the Hawthorn racism scandal, inquiry, investigation. I'm not quite sure what the words are for it, but took a turn this week. Mediation cancelled, which was meant to be held today, but didn't go forward. We're at a point now where the AFL's taking the investigation back from the panel. So 8 months of basically useless work taken. We're at a point here, Darrow, where I think just no one wins. The accused have no justice. The accused have no natural justice or procedural fairness. And the AFL's essentially now doing something that they should have done right from the beginning, and everyone's just been sort of dragged through the mud for 8 months because of it. No one wins. Yeah,
like you said, there's no winners, and I guess obviously people feel hard done by on both sides at the end of this. I don't think the AFL have done themselves any favours with the way that they've handled it. Probably, given the seriousness of the claims, needed to be dealt with a lot more quickly, and your reputation's at stake, and really, Clarkson. Fagan and Burton, they're tainted by this regardless of the outcome. What do they say? Mud sticks.
Yeah.
So, look, it's a little bit disappointing, and for all involved, really, at the end of the day.
Yeah, and we're going to get to a point where I don't think this is the end if they're exonerated from this investigation. Exonerated is the wrong term. The media keeps on saying exonerated. They're not in a criminal trial. There's no such thing as an exoneration. But if they're cleared, I suppose, through the investigation, putting on a leap. Sorry, go ahead.
So they won't be cleared though. That's the thing, because if they don't, they're not thrashing it out. You know what I mean? Like there's no mediation. I'm probably getting a little bit too deeply into this. There really is nothing. I mean, nothing has happened at all. There's been some claims made, and that's it. And to this day, Clarkson and co haven't had access to those claims, which is just ridiculous when you think about it. But anyway, it's
just a schmozzle, all round schmozzle.
It is absolutely.
Yeah, and it's nice that we're not the schmozzle for the first time in 15 years. Like you don't wish on this to happen You don't wish this upon anyone, but if it's going to happen to someone, at least this time, it's not us. And as Essendon fans, we can empathise probably more so than any other fan base in the AFL.
Well, yeah, we've been through it, and we know what it feels like, and I guess having a bit of empathy is good at the end of the day.
Yeah. Well, on to brighter notes, I suppose, which is this week's game against West Coast. I have one question with you to start there. Just how bad are the West Coast Eagles? They've lost to the 18th ranked team by 116 points. I think it is the second largest loss to a team ranked 18th going into a round. Their injury list is quite literally unprecedented. They're fielding what looks to be a waffle team at this point. Just how bad are the West Coast Eagles?
Oh, they're bad. they're really bad. Let's hope we beat them on the weekend. But yeah, they're horrible. I watched a little bit of the game. Not much. Enough. A couple of minutes. That was enough for me. It was horrible. Yeah, there weren't too many recognisable players out there. I heard somewhere that you might have some numbers. There's remnants of their senior list available, and that's it at the moment. And it's a good time to be playing them.
Yeah, I think the stat that they've shown is I think there's like 400 games experience. So like 400 games more experience missing than there is on the park. I think it's like 2,000 games worth of experience missing, and they're playing about 14 or 1,500. So that's quite literally unprecedented. I think they had 19 players on the injury list, and they've picked up another couple of injuries this week. So I think.
No one important though. It wasn't Oscar Allen or anyone like that. Kick a goal.
Well, now that you mention it, he's left training with a leg injury. Just good for them. It's the definition of unprecedented what they're going through. I have serious concerns about what they're going to do in terms of fielding a team. They're missing 8 of their 10 most experienced footballers at this point, and you need 22 to field a team, but that's for AFL policymakers to figure out. In terms of our injury list, we've got 3 guys who are all chances of coming in this week. We've got Shield, Guelphy and Laverty, who are all declared fit for AFL duties. Guelphy, I imagine, will be a sub considering he only played VFL for a half if he does play at AFL level. What are your expected changes? I thought, Phillips was pretty tired out there against Richmond.
Well,
do you bring in Brian?
Nice way of putting it. Brian in, Phillips out. Yeah, definitely. No, Phillips needs a rest. I don't know. I reckon Guelphy could probably spend a little bit more time in the reserves because if he only played a half, I can't really think of anyone else. I think everyone else was at worst solid on the weekend. Even guys like Baldwin, who are probably our 5th choice for the position down back, were pretty good. Was pretty good, I should say. It feels like we've got a bit of depth, even though we've got a few people out. I haven't thought that for a while. So, it'd be interesting. What about you? Who do you think?
I think Laverty, if he's fit, probably comes in for Baldwin. I think as solid as Baldwin was, I think Laverty's got the seniority there, and they play a sort of similar role. But that'll be depending on how fit Laverty is. And I think Shield, if he gets over his ankle, probably comes in. It was great to have the young guy step up to the midfield, but if Shield's available, I think that's helpful for our young midfield to bring him back in. Otherwise, I think you don't want to change a winning side all that much. So you got to be really careful. And West Coast aren't great. So if Laverty or Shield or any of those guys need an extra week, I suppose this is a week for it.
Yeah, absolutely. Actually, now that you mention it, maybe Davey could probably do with a break. Possibly.
Yeah.
Maybe. And Snelling. I guess you want to play your best side, so that they might. I don't think either of those two were fantastic on the weekend, but as you say, if those players available, need another week, we may as well give them another week. Yeah, I think Shield was pretty close, wasn't he?
Yeah, I think that was as late a call up as you can get. I think it was basically Saturday morning. But yeah, if Shield comes in, I think Davey or Snelling are probably the guys that go out. What do you want to see? So is it we have to win by 10 goals or it's not good enough? Or are you a bit more like me where I'm just like, as long as we don't Essington this up and lose it, I'm okay?
No, I think they need to go out there and give it everything. try and win by as much as they can. Don't take the foot off the accelerator at all. I don't know. West Coast are a very average side. We need to really be winning games like this and going big, I think, when we win.
Yeah, I think there's a good chance we'll probably win. I think 7 to 8 goals is probably par, which is bizarre considering it's Essendon West Coast. But this is historically the game we lose, and I'm petrified of losing it.
Right, exactly. We can't lose now.
Yeah, that's it. I just
look, Hawthorn. Well, Hawthorn beat them by 120 points, and Hawthorn are not flash. So,
yeah,
I mean, if you're using them as your measuring stick, we should do it pretty easily.
Yeah.
But yeah, I don't want to tempt fate too much.
No, I have the feeling of like Melbourne beating us when we were 8-1 and they were basically 0 and sip, and just the unlosable game. If there's a way to lose a game, we will lose it. So let's see if the Scott effect can overcome that. So I suppose the final question, Darrow, before we wrap up, is tip and margin. I think we're both picking Essendon, but what's your margin and maybe a crazy prediction for the game?
Okay, all right. Well, I'm gonna go with 80 or 90 points.
Oof.
Yeah, and I reckon Wiedemann will kick 5 or 6 goals.
Right. Yeah. Okay. Well, I suppose those two go hand in hand. If we're going to win by 80 or 90, someone's got to kick 5 or 6, and he'd probably be as good as anyone. I think it's going to be closer than people would like. I think it's going to be a 6-goal win, 5 or 6 goals. I think it's going to be tight for most of the game, and we might kick on late. And I think crazy prediction is that Redmond will kick 3 off the halfback flank. I think that's the crazy prediction for this week. I don't know if that is crazy.
All from outside 50? All from outside 50? Or yeah.
Well, I'm hoping. Well, I suppose he probably can't get much closer playing off halfback. If he kicks 3 from the goal square, then West Coast really are bad. Like if your halfback flanker is getting into the goal square to kick goals, then it's a procession, but that's okay. If that happens, I'll be happy. Darrow, thanks for joining. I know you've been on a couple of times in the past, but it's great to have you back again this season.
Thank you very much for having me on.
No, it was a pleasure to have you. And for everyone listening, thank you for joining us. Make sure you like, subscribe, tell your Essendon supporting mates. Thanks for listening again. Enjoy the win against Richmond, and we'll see you next week.
Go Bombers.